My name is Hazel, and after 5 years of what I believed was a loving and stable marriage to my husband Daniel, our relationship unraveled in the most painful way. We met during college, dated for 1 year, and got married, sharing common goals and a supportive partnership. Daniel was charismatic, reliable, and someone everyone admired. However, beneath this ideal facade, a storm was brewing that I never anticipated. Growing up, I was known as the responsible one, often praised for my maturity and reliability, while my younger sister, Ella, was the family's golden child. She was vivacious and effortlessly charming, making her the favorite in the eyes of our parents and nearly everyone she met. Our families were close, and Ella's frequent visits seemed normal until the day I discovered her true relationship with Daniel. One day, feeling unwell, I returned home from work early and found Ella's bag in the living room. A sinking feeling hit me as I heard voices from the bedroom. My worst fears were confirmed when I walked in on Daniel and Ella together. The betrayal was profound, compounded by their shocked faces, and I felt like I was living a nightmare. I left home immediately, but the ordeal was far from over. Seeking support, I turned to my parents, only to be met with indifference and blame. They suggested that my actions had pushed Daniel away and that Ella was showing him real love. Both our families sided with Daniel and Ella, leaving me isolated and betrayed. The subsequent divorce was swift and emotionally brutal. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, Ella eventually left Daniel for another man, leading to an unexpected turn where both families began urging me to forgive Daniel. This situation has pushed me to seek perspective and share my story, looking for understanding and perhaps closure from this painful chapter in my life. After separating from Daniel and the life we had built together, I chose to leave behind many reminders of our past and moved into a small apartment. There, I faced the challenge of reconstructing my life from scratch without any support system. Almost all of my social connections were severed. Influenced by my family's sway, Daniel and his new partner, Ella, had successfully portrayed me as the unstable one, while Ella was seen as Daniel's savior. Despite these circumstances, I persevered. I immersed myself in my work and gradually began to form new relationships with people who were unaware of the turmoil my life had become. I found solace in friendships with a few compassionate neighbors. Over time, I managed to rebuild my life, discovering an inner strength and independence I hadn't realized I possessed. It was a profound, albeit difficult, journey, but I took pride in navigating it on my own. Just as I was beginning to enjoy a sense of peace, my life took an unexpected turn. My phone was inundated with calls and messages from my family and Daniel's. Initially, I dismissed them as either a cruel joke or misguided attempts at reconciliation. However, the persistence of the calls compelled me to listen to one of the voicemails, which left me stunned. Ella had abandoned Daniel for another man. Suddenly, both families were in disarray, trying to coax me back to fill the void Ella had left. They saw me as the ideal replacement, the rightful wife, to mend the situation. The barrage of messages ranged from emotional appeals to return and forgive, to absurd claims that it was my duty to give Daniel a second chance and demonstrate my strength through forgiveness. My own mother argued that returning would validate my worth as a daughter, a notion that underscored years of disregard by a family that had once discarded me. Daniel's family insisted that he was lost without me, pressing that my return was essential for the family's unity. To them, my personal feelings and the betrayal I had suffered seemed irrelevant. Their main concern was maintaining appearances. Frustrated and angered by their audacity after all I had endured, the loss of my family, husband, and social circle, they now believed they could simply summon me back as if I were merely a standby option, an old piece of furniture to be used as needed. Worse still, they acted as though I should be grateful for the opportunity to return. For a time, I contemplated confronting them. Part of me wanted to express the depth of my hurt and the absurdity of their requests. Yet, another part of me recognized the futility of such an action. They had never truly seen me as a person with feelings, only as someone who could fulfill a role. I knew that confronting them would likely change nothing. They would twist my words, make it about themselves, and fail to acknowledge the real issues at stake. For some time now, I've been keeping my distance, ignoring calls and messages in an effort to find some tranquility within the life I've painstakingly created for myself. Despite my efforts, the constant contact attempts have been an ongoing disruption. Every few days brings a new voicemail or text, each one pulling me back into a whirlpool of anger and distress. It seems they don't recognize me as a person with my own struggles and emotions. Rather, they view me merely as a tool to fix their problems, which has been incredibly draining. I'm weary of feeling like I'm the only one who understands the depth of dysfunction in this situation. I genuinely believe I'm justified in staying away, yet there's a part of me that questions if I'm overlooking something. Should I confront them to expose the extent of the harm they've caused? Or is it better to simply cut them off and let them handle their own chaos? I've made significant personal progress, but this ordeal has reopened numerous old wounds I thought had healed. Since posting about my situation, things have only escalated. My inbox and phone are bombarded with messages and calls from both my family and Daniel's. It's overwhelming to manage, and the constant notifications have made me dread even glancing at my phone. I've attempted to block numbers, but new ones emerge, along with emails, as if they're determined to break my resolve. Recently, I answered an unfamiliar number, thinking it might be work-related. To my dismay, it was Daniel. He launched into what seemed like a rehearsed apology, claiming deep remorse for his egregious mistakes. The audacity was astounding. He spoke as if he'd merely forgotten to pick up milk, not betrayed our marriage by being unfaithful with my sister. He insisted we owed it to our shared history to try and reconcile, to attempt to restore what was lost. Hearing this after all he'd done felt like a physical blow. His nerve to reference our 5-year marriage as something to be valued was baffling. He spoke of missing the stability we once had and expressed a desire to settle down now that Ella was out of the picture. He kept using phrases like our life and our history, as if a few apologies could erase the betrayal, the loneliness, and the sheer devastation he'd caused. His words seemed delusional, suggesting that mere apologies could mend the deep wounds he had inflicted. The whole conversation was surreal, almost laughable, due to the sheer ridiculousness of his assumptions about our potential reconciliation. As I sat there, speechless and simmering with anger, I couldn't believe he had the audacity to speak about us after everything that had happened. With each word, my anger intensified until I finally interrupted him. Why now? Why do you suddenly care? His feeble explanation about realizing his loss and expecting me to be strong enough to forgive and take him back was insulting. Strength had nothing to do with enduring his betrayal. After I hung up, my parents inundated me with messages, urging me to consider his plea for forgiveness as a victory, as if I should be grateful for his half-hearted attempt at reconciliation. They seemed oblivious to my hurt, suggesting his request for a second chance should make me feel validated. Their words only fueled my frustration, as they failed to see that I was the one who had been wronged, discarded as if I meant nothing. Out of desperation, I called Ella, the other party in this turmoil, though she didn't answer. In a voicemail and a subsequent email, I unloaded my pent-up frustrations, detailing her role in the upheaval of my life and our family. I demanded she take responsibility and explain herself to our parents. My words were sharp and unyielding, reflecting the depth of my pain and betrayal. Predictably, Ella never replied. She had moved on, leaving behind a trail of destruction without a backward glance, while I dealt with the fallout and endless family interventions. It seemed like everyone expected me to mend the situation, unable to see that I wasn't just a pawn to be moved at their convenience. One particularly difficult conversation with my aunt, whom I had once trusted deeply, epitomized this sentiment. She implored me to forgive, claiming it was my duty to show grace despite my suffering. Her words felt like a betrayal, reducing my pain to an obstacle in the way of family harmony. It was clear they valued peace over my well-being, unable to understand that some wounds run too deep for simple apologies to heal. I found myself deeply unsettled to the point where I couldn't even muster a response. I just hung up the phone and broke down in tears. Despite the overwhelming desire to sever all ties, I find it excruciatingly difficult. Deep down, a part of me still longs for their acceptance and approval. It's not healthy, I realize that. They've shown me their true colors time and again, yet the pain of their betrayal and the sting of realization that they may never love me unconditionally cuts deep. It feels like a part of me is still that little girl yearning for parental love that I now understand will never fully materialize. Here I am, feeling lost once more. Just when I thought I had moved past these feelings and pieced my life back together, they pull me back in. Part of me wants to confront them, to express all that I feel about their so-called family values. Yet, another part of me questions if it's worth the energy. No matter how much I try to explain, they will never see me for who I am or respect my boundaries. It's hard to completely walk away when they continuously reel me back in. Currently, I am mentally and emotionally exhausted. It feels like they are trying to erase all that I have worked for, every bit of peace I have fought to find. I struggle not to blame myself, even though logically I know I am not in the wrong. However, that peace was short-lived. Just a few days after I had blocked everyone, I returned home from work, drained and eager to unwind, only to find my mother standing outside my apartment as though it were the most natural occurrence. My heart sank. I had never disclosed my new address post-divorce, so her presence felt like a severe invasion of my privacy. For a moment, I considered pretending I hadn't seen her and simply walking away, but I knew avoiding her would only be a temporary solution. Confronting her felt inevitable. She was the epitome of emotional manipulation, explaining how the family was falling apart, how Daniel was miserable and Ella's absence left a void no one could fill. She emphasized how crucial family is, as if that imposed some duty on me to mend everything simply because we share blood. Her words continued, a relentless stream designed to wear me down. She spoke of it as if it were my responsibility to forget our past troubles, emphasizing that families should reconcile, especially with Christmas approaching, a perfect chance for unity. The irony was thick. This was the same person who remained passive as my husband and sister turned my world upside down. Now, she expected me to be the peacemaker. As she droned on about forgiveness and moving forward, I struggled to maintain my calm, feeling both infuriated and exhausted. When she finally left, I was emotionally drained, vividly reminded of my low priority within the family hierarchy. Not long after her departure, an unexpected email from Daniel appeared in my inbox. His name alone was jarring. His message, brief yet intentional, expressed understanding of my feelings and a hope to discuss things. He even attached a photo from our wedding, a photo that once brought joy now twisted my gut. I deleted his email instantly, determined not to let him disturb my peace again. Then out of the blue, Ella sent an email. Its subject, "I'm sorry," momentarily raised my hopes for a genuine apology. Yet, her message was nothing more than excuses. She claimed their affair was a result of love, as if that justified her actions, and shockingly, she expressed hope that Daniel and I might reconcile. Her so-called support was meaningless to me. Overwhelmed with anger, I deleted her message too. Engaging with her seemed pointless, a mere invitation to let her rewrite the narrative of our past without acknowledging the real harm done. These weeks have been some of the toughest in my life. The betrayal, the pressure to forgive, and the continuous manipulation have all taken a significant toll. Although therapy has been a solace, progress feels slow. It's challenging to remain hopeful when setbacks seem constant. Yet this ordeal has underscored the importance of prioritizing my well-being, even when pressured to do otherwise. With the holidays nearing, I brace for the inevitable emphasis on family unity, which will no doubt be difficult. But for the first time, I am learning to stand firm in my resolve, to focus on my healing despite the expectations placed upon me. This path is not easy, but it is necessary for my peace and future happiness. That I was making the right decision by putting my own well-being first. For too long, I've prioritized maintaining harmony and ensuring everyone else's happiness, often at the cost of my own mental health. Now, I'm choosing to steer my life based on what's best for me, even if it disappoints some along the way. Admittedly, It's not a straightforward path. There are moments filled with doubt, where I reflect on the relationships I've stepped back from and question whether I'm making the right choices. But then I recall the events that led me here, the actions of others that pushed me to this point, and I find reassurance in my decision. I've come to realize that I'm not obligated to sacrifice my tranquility, joy, or mental stability for anyone else. It's perfectly acceptable to distance myself from those who fail to respect my boundaries, regardless of our relationship. Looking ahead, the future is filled with uncertainties, and I anticipate further challenges, particularly with the holidays approaching. However, I'm committed to not letting my past experiences dictate my future. A significant warning sign was a letter I received from Daniel's parents recently. Initially, I hoped it might be a gesture towards reconciliation or at least an apology. Instead, it was filled with blame, labeling me as selfish and immature for not reconciling with Daniel and for allegedly exacerbating everyone's distress. The letter concluded with a veiled threat to tarnish my reputation among our friends unless I complied with their demands. This accusation and threat clarified that my decision to set boundaries and prioritize my happiness was not only necessary, but justified. It underscored the importance of removing myself from a toxic dynamic where my personal boundaries are not only unrespected, but blatantly challenged. As difficult as it is, this journey of prioritizing myself is essential, and I'm learning to navigate it with the support of those who genuinely care about my well-being. I had long decided that I couldn't trust these individuals. It was imperative to protect myself from their influence at all costs. The situation escalated unexpectedly one day while I was at work, deeply engaged in my tasks. A colleague approached, informing me that someone awaited me in the lobby. Initially assuming it was a simple delivery or perhaps a surprise visit from a friend, I was unprepared for what I found. Daniel was there, standing like a character from a romantic comedy, clutching a bouquet of flowers. My heart sank. This was the last thing I needed, and it felt as though time had frozen. Why he thought this gesture was appropriate baffled me. It wasn't merely the presence of the flowers that upset me. It was his audacity to appear at my workplace, a place where I felt secure, especially after I had repeatedly made it clear that he was no longer a part of my life. His blatant disregard for the boundaries I had set was astounding. He seemed to believe that flowers could magically mend everything he had ruined. The spectacle wasn't just uncomfortable for me, it was downright humiliating. My colleagues were witnesses to this drama, and I could feel their gazes, heavy with judgment, making an already difficult situation intolerable. Daniel, oblivious to my discomfort, continued to profess his apologies and longing for reconciliation, as if his emotions were the only ones that mattered. He declared that we were destined to be together, ignoring the obvious distress and disarray before him. His narrative recast him as a wronged hero, while in reality, he was the orchestrator of this turmoil. His actions were selfish. It seemed a manipulative attempt to make me feel guilty for his mistakes rather than acknowledging them. Anger boiled inside me, yet I maintained my composure and demanded he leave immediately. This was not the place for his apologies. He disregarded my request, so I retreated to my office, my body trembling with frustration. I locked the door behind me, attempting to calm myself, and called security to escort him out. It was clear that I had no other option but to defend myself once again. That evening, I took a step I never imagined necessary. I filed for a restraining order against Daniel. The thought of seeking legal protection from someone I once cared deeply for was heartbreaking, but essential for my safety and peace of mind. I could no longer allow him to disrupt my life, invading my space and stripping me of my power. It was crucial to assert control over my circumstances. Meanwhile, my family's interference didn't cease. Despite cutting off contact, they found new ways to reach out. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent a lengthy message preaching forgiveness, conveniently omitting their indifference during my times of turmoil. An aunt, equally distant, emailed me about the importance of being the bigger person and releasing my anger. It was astonishing how these peripheral family members felt entitled to advise me on my healing process without any real understanding of my struggles. The most painful aspect, however, involved my mother. Despite a clear confrontation where I expressed my desire to distance myself from the chaos, she persisted in trying to guilt-trip me into reconciliation. Recently, she left a voicemail accusing me of tearing the family apart by refusing to forgive Daniel and Ella, showing no regard for the anguish their actions had caused me. Her focus remained solely on the repercussions of my decisions on them, disregarding my well-being. It can be exhausting to continually find myself pulled back into the turmoil, just when I think I've managed to escape it. Yet, amidst these challenges, I've reached an essential realization. I am worthy of a better life. I deserve more than what Daniel and my family's harmful behaviors have offered, and certainly more than the constrained existence they've tried to impose on me. In pursuit of this, I've relocated to a new apartment, a place they are unaware of. I've taken stricter measures to safeguard my privacy, including a new phone number and enhanced security settings on my personal accounts. Although it's disheartening to need such extensive precautions, they are crucial for maintaining my mental well-being. Therapy has been a cornerstone of my journey, providing a safe space where I've learned the importance of self-preservation. My therapist reinforces that removing toxic influences is not only permissible, but vital for my health. Progress may be gradual, and there are days when I feel like I'm just surviving, but I am now prioritizing myself in ways I never did before. For the first time in many years, I am putting my own needs first, and this shift is both new and profoundly liberating.